I'm Grace, and I've been married to Daniel for over 30 years. We live in a creaky old house on the edge of a pine forest in rural Oregon, the kind of place where the wind whistles through the cracks and the silence feels heavier than it should. Our life together used to be full. Laughter over late-night coffee, stolen kisses in the barn while he tinkered with his trucks. But lately, that silence has crept into every corner, even the bedroom. It's not that we don't love each other. We do, in that steady, worn-in way you get after decades. But something's gone missing. I can't tell you exactly when the spark faded, only that it's been years since I felt my heart race for him. Daniel noticed it too. One morning, as we sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the toast burnt and the coffee weak, he set his mug down hard and said, "You just lie there, Grace, like you're waiting for it to be over." His voice wasn't angry, just tired, like he'd been carrying that thought for too long. I looked at him, the lines around his eyes deeper than I remembered, and snapped back, "Maybe you've forgotten how to make me want it." The words came out sharper than I meant, slicing through the quiet. He didn't argue, just stared at the table, his big hands still around the mug. That's when we both knew we couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. We found Vincent a week later, a counselor in town, recommended by a friend of a friend. Mid-50s, salt and pepper hair, always in a crisp blazer that made him look like he belonged somewhere fancier than our little nowhere. His office was small but warm, with leather chairs and a faint smell of cedar. The first time we sat down, he didn't say much, just watched us with these steady gray eyes like he could see through the walls we didn't even know we'd built. I crossed my arms and said, "I don't feel anything anymore, not with him." Daniel shifted beside me, his work boots scuffing the floor. "It's been dead for a while," he muttered, barely loud enough to hear. Vincent didn't flinch. He leaned back, steepled his fingers, and let the silence stretch until it felt like a third person in the room. Then he said, "You're not broken. You're just stuck." His voice was smooth, low, like river stone polished over years. "Stuck how?" I asked, uncrossing my arms, feeling the weight of his gaze. "You've fallen into a pattern," he said. "Same moves, same words, same nights. Your body knows what's coming, so it stops waiting for anything new." Daniel scoffed quietly, but I could tell he was listening. "So what do we do?" he asked, his tone flat, like he didn't expect much of an answer. Vincent leaned forward just a fraction, not invasive but intentional. "Shake it up," he said. "Try something raw, something unexpected. Stop thinking so much, just feel." His eyes flicked to me, lingering a beat too long, and my stomach tightened. Not with fear exactly, but something else, something I hadn't felt in a while. Daniel shifted again, his knee brushing mine. "Like what?" he asked, his voice softer now, uncertain. Vincent smiled faintly, just a curve at the corner of his mouth. "Experiment," he said. And that word hit me like a pebble dropped in still water, sending ripples I couldn't quite name. We didn't talk much on the drive home, the gravel crunching under the tires of Daniel's old pickup. The pines loomed dark against the dusk, and I kept replaying Vincent's words in my head. Experiment. What did that even mean for us? Two people who'd spent half their lives doing things the same way? The next morning, over more weak coffee, Daniel looked at me across the table and said, "We should try it." What he said. I stirred my mug, watching the spoon swirl. "Try what, exactly?" I asked. He shrugged, his broad shoulders hunching slightly. "Something different. Whatever it takes." His eyes met mine, and for the first time in months, I saw a flicker of something, determination maybe, or just desperation. I nodded, slow and careful, like we were stepping onto thin ice together. That night, as the wind rattled the windows and the house groaned around us, I lay in bed wondering what different would look like. I could still feel Vincent's gaze on me, the way it seemed to pull at something deep inside, something I'd buried under years of routine. Daniel rolled over, his hand resting on my arm, heavy and familiar. "We'll figure it out," he said, his voice rough with sleep. I didn't answer, just stared at the ceiling, the shadows of the pines shifting across it. Whatever we were about to do, I had a feeling it was going to change more than I was ready for. The next evening, Daniel didn't waste time. I was still in my slippers, folding laundry on the couch, when he came in from the garage, wiping his hands on an old rag. The air smelled faintly of motor oil and pine sap, clinging to him as he stood there, looking at me. "Come with me," he said, his voice low, almost a challenge. I set the towel down, my pulse ticking up a notch, and followed him out the back door. The gravel crunched under my feet as he led me into his workshop, a cluttered space of rusted tools and half-finished projects lit by a single bulb swinging overhead. He didn't say anything else, just turned me around and pressed me against the workbench. His hands landed firm on my hips, pulling me back into him, and I felt the rough edge of the wood dig into my palms as I braced myself. His lips found my neck, warm and quick, scraping stubble across my skin like he was trying to wake something up. "Don't think," he growled, his breath hot against my ear. Vincent's words coming through him now. I gripped the bench tighter, focusing on the press of his fingers, the steady rhythm he set as he moved against me. It wasn't like before, not soft, not careful. It was different, raw, the way Vincent had said. My heart thudded, and I tried to lose myself in it, matching his pace, letting my body follow his lead. But even as the dust stirred around us and the bulb flickered, I felt it. My mind was there, my skin alive, but something deeper stayed asleep. When he stepped back, breathing hard, I stayed where I was, staring at a screwdriver left on the bench, its handle worn smooth. "Was that it?" he asked, voice rough. I turned my head just enough to see him, his chest rising and falling. "It was something," I said, but we both knew it wasn't enough. 2 nights later, I decided to take control. The house was quiet, the wind calmer than usual, and Daniel was sprawled on the bed in his boxers, flipping through a car magazine. I didn't warn him, just walked over, plucked the pages from his hands, and climbed onto his lap. His eyebrows shot up, but he didn't resist as I leaned in, kissing his neck slow and deliberate, the way I used to when we were younger and couldn't keep our hands off each other. His hands settled on my thighs, warm and steady, letting me set the pace. I moved my hips, ran my fingers down his chest, whispered his name against his skin. He exhaled, soft and low, his grip tightening as I shifted over him. I made the sounds I knew he liked, touched him where I knew he'd respond, but it felt like I was acting out a memory. My body present, my breath quick, but my heart stayed quiet, unmoved. When I finally eased off him, lying back on the mattress, he didn't ask how it felt. I didn't pretend it was more than it was. We just lay there, the ceiling fan humming above us, spinning the same old air. A few days later, he caught me off guard. I was in the kitchen, rinsing dishes under the dim light over the sink when I felt his arms slide around my waist. The plate slipped from my hands, clattering into the basin, as he turned me toward the counter. His lips brushed my ear, then my jaw, his hands tugging at the hem of my sweater. "Right here," he murmured, voice thick, and I didn't stop him. I braced my palms on the edge of the counter, the cold steel biting into my skin as he pressed closer, his fingers working the button on my jeans. The clink of his belt buckle broke the quiet, a sharp sound against the drip of the faucet. He moved fast, urgent, like he thought surprise might crack whatever wall was between us. I stared ahead, the chipped faucet, a stack of bills by the toaster, a half-empty jar of pickles, and waited for something to shift inside me. His hands were steady, his breath ragged, but all I felt was the motion, the mechanics of it. When he finished, he stepped back, adjusting his shirt. I stayed there, watching water pool in the sink, and said nothing. He didn't ask. Our last try was in the bathroom, late that week. I'd just stepped out of the shower, towel around my shoulders, when he pushed the door open and pulled me back in. The steam clouded the glass as he shut off the faucet and wrapped his arms around me, letting the water run over us both. His hands traced my shoulders, my back, slow and gentle, like he was afraid to break something fragile. "Just feel me," he whispered, his voice soft against the rush of the spray. I closed my eyes, leaned into him, tried to anchor myself in the warmth of his touch, the steady press of his chest against mine. His lips brushed my shoulder, his fingers slid down my sides, and for a moment, just a flicker, I thought I felt it, a pull low in my chest, something alive. But then it slipped away, fading into the steam, leaving me hollow again. He held me there a while longer, water dripping from his hair onto my skin, then stepped out, leaving me under the stream. I pressed my forehead to the tile, letting the heat drown the silence, and wondered why I couldn't reach whatever he was chasing. That night, lying in bed with the blankets tangled around us, I stared at the ceiling and whispered, "It's not enough." Daniel didn't move, but I saw his jaw tighten in the dim light. He took a slow breath, then said, "Then we go further." His voice was steady, resolute, like he'd already made up his mind. I turned my head to look at him, his profile sharp against the pillow. "Further how?" I asked, my throat tight. He didn't answer right away, just reached over and squeezed my hand, his calluses rough against my skin. "We'll figure it out," he said finally, but the way he said it made me think he already had something in mind, something bigger than either of us was ready to admit. The next night, Danielle didn't explain, just acted. I was brushing my hair in the bedroom, the mirror reflecting the faint glow of the bedside lamp, when he came up behind me. His hands were steady as he took the brush from my fingers and set it on the dresser. "Trust me," he said, his voice low, almost a plea. I turned to face him, searching his eyes, but before I could ask, he reached into the closet and pulled out an old plaid scarf, one he'd worn years ago when he'd fixed engines in the winter. He held it up, letting it dangle between us, and I knew what he meant without him saying it. I nodded, slow and uncertain, and he stepped closer. He wrapped the scarf around my wrists, tying them together. Not tight, but snug enough that I felt the fabric bite into my skin when I flexed. Then he grabbed a clean dish towel from the laundry basket, folded it once, and draped it over my eyes. He knotted it loose behind my head, and the world went dark. The room fell quiet, just the sound of my own breathing and the creak of the floorboards as he moved. I stood there, hands bound in front of me, waiting, my pulse thudding in my ears. The mattress dipped as he guided me to the bed, easing me down onto my back. I felt the cool sheets against my skin, the weight of his presence beside me. His hands started at my shoulders, slow and deliberate, fingers tracing the lines of my arms, then sliding down my sides. His lips followed, soft against my jaw, then my throat, a warm trail that made my breath catch. He didn't rush, didn't speak, just moved with this quiet certainty, like he was trying to pull me out of myself. His mouth drifted lower, over my collarbone, and I shivered, the towel blocking everything but the feel of him. His hands gripped my hips, firm now, pressing me into the mattress as he shifted closer. I arched slightly, caught off guard by the steadiness of it, the way he lingered where I didn't expect. My breath hitched, a small sound in the stillness, and he adjusted, his touch heavier, more intentional. For a second, I thought I might feel it, something real, but it stayed just out of reach, teasing the edges of me. He paused then, his breathing uneven, and I heard the rustle of fabric as he untied my wrists. His fingers shook as he rubbed the marks left behind, rough thumbs smoothing over my skin. "I've got one more idea," he said, his voice low, almost urgent. He didn't wait for me to answer, just eased me onto my stomach, the towel slipping loose but still covering my eyes. I felt him behind me, his hands steady again, settling at my waist. There was a moment of hesitation, a sharp intake of breath, his or mine, I couldn't tell. Then pressure, careful and slow. My body tensed, every muscle tightening as he adjusted, searching for something deeper. "Trust me," he whispered, his voice close to my ear, and I nodded into the pillow, trying to relax, trying to meet him halfway. His grip was firm, his rhythm patient, each motion grounded like he was holding something back. I focused on the weight of him, the way his hands anchored me, the quiet strain in his breathing. He was giving everything, reaching for a spark I couldn't find. I wanted it to work. God, I did. But when he finally collapsed beside me, chest heaving, I pulled the towel off and stared at the ceiling. "Still nothing," I murmured, my voice barely audible. He didn't move, didn't speak, just lay there, the silence swallowing us both. 2 days later, we were back in Vincent's office. The leather chairs squeaked as we sat down, the air thick with cedar and something unspoken. "We've done everything," I said, my hands clasped tight in my lap. Daniel nodded beside me, his elbows on his knees, head bowed. "Tried it all," he added, his voice flat. Vincent watched us, his gray eyes steady, then leaned back in his chair. "You've done more than most," he said, pausing just long enough to let it sink in. "But sometimes effort isn't the answer. Sometimes it's guidance." I frowned, my throat tightening. "What kind?" I asked, though I already felt the shift in the room. He leaned forward, elbows resting on his desk, his voice calm but heavy. "Something shared, controlled, with someone who knows how to pull you out of yourself." My pulse jumped, a quick, sharp thud against my ribs. I swallowed, glanced at Daniel, then back at Vincent. "You mean you?" I asked, the words slipping out before I could stop them. He didn't blink, didn't hesitate. "Only if you both agree," he said, his gaze holding mine. "I can show you how to let go, how to feel without guessing." When Daniel shifted beside me, his knee brushing mine again, and I turned to him. His jaw was tight, but his eyes met mine, steady, searching. "You'd be there?" he asked Vincent, his voice rough. "The whole time," Vincent replied. "Reading her, adjusting, giving you both what you need." No one spoke for a moment, the air humming between us. I felt Daniel's hand brush mine, a question in the touch, and I didn't pull away. "What do you think?" he asked me, quiet, almost a whisper. I looked at Vincent, his calm certainty, then back at Daniel's familiar face, worn, hopeful, desperate. "Okay," I said, my voice trembling just enough to betray me. Vincent nodded once, a faint smile tugging at his lips, and stood up, motioning toward the leather sofa in the corner. "Then let's begin," he said, and I knew there was no turning back. Vincent locked the office door with a soft click, the sound sharp in the quiet. He dimmed the lights until the room felt smaller, the leather chairs and cedar scent fading into shadow. He gestured to the sofa in the corner, its worn cushions catching the faint glow from a lamp on his desk. "May I?" he asked, his voice steady, almost gentle. I glanced at Daniel, his silhouette stiff in the chair across the room, then back at Vincent. My throat tightened, but I nodded, slow and deliberate. He stepped closer, his fingers brushing my cheek, light but sure, like he was testing the air between us. Then he leaned in and kissed me, soft and unhurried, his lips warm against mine. I didn't pull away, didn't move, just let it happen, my breath catching in my chest. He said nothing after, just stepped behind me, his hands steady as they found the hem of my blouse. He lifted it over my shoulders, slow and exact, the fabric whispering against my skin as it fell to the floor. My breath hitched as he unhooked my bra, his fingers brushing my back, and the cool air hit me like a warning. I stood there, exposed, my arms loose at my sides, but I wasn't cold, wasn't nervous, just waiting. Behind me, I heard Daniel's breathing, shallow and focused, his eyes on us from across the room. Vincent placed a palm between my shoulder blades, warm and firm, and guided me toward the sofa. I followed, my steps quiet on the hardwood, and he eased me down onto the cushions, the leather cool against my bare skin. He lowered himself beside me, his blazer still on, his presence close but not crowding. His mouth found my neck, soft and calm, tracing a line down to my collarbone. His hands rested at my hips, then slid lower, steady and deliberate, like he knew exactly where to go. I felt warmth, not sharp, not sudden, just there, spreading slow through me. He didn't rush, didn't check for permission, just moved with this quiet certainty, responding to the way my breath shifted. My hips moved once, then again, instinctive, and he adjusted, not dramatic, just enough to keep me with him. I wasn't floating this time, wasn't tensing. I was fully inside the moment, every touch pulling me deeper. The floor creaked faintly, and I knew Daniel had moved closer, his boots scuffing the wood. Vincent didn't stop, just kept going, his lips drifting along my side now, his hands anchoring me. Then he stood, slow and deliberate, unbuttoning his blazer and folding it neatly over the armrest. Without a word, he reached for my hand, lifting it, not forceful, not demanding, just guiding. I let him, my fingers brushing his chest as he leaned down and kissed me again, steady and real. He eased me back onto the sofa, moving over me until our bodies aligned. No sudden shift, just closeness, warm and grounded. His hands held my hips in place, his rhythm careful, not for show but for feeling. I reached up, gripped his shoulders, not to steer him, just to hold on. And something inside me shifted. A breath, a hum, a beat I hadn't felt in years. From the corner of my eye, I saw Daniel now standing beside us, his chest rising fast, his hands clenched at his sides. Vincent slowed, turned his head slightly, and said, "She's ready." His voice was calm, certain. He shifted aside, one hand still on my thigh, and guided Daniel forward, lifting his arm, positioning him. Daniel hesitated, his eyes locking with mine, then leaned over me. I didn't flinch. I welcomed him, my hands finding his familiar shoulders. He moved closer, and the rhythm returned, different now, deeper, alive. My body adjusted, my breathing matched his, and Vincent stayed beside me, his hand a quiet anchor on my skin. Each breath felt fuller, each second closer to something I couldn't name. The air thickened, the space around us pulsed, and then it broke. Not loud, not a flash, just a release, like I'd finally come back to myself. I arched once, gripped the cushion beneath me, and exhaled completely, the weight of years lifting for the first time. When it was over, Daniel sank beside me on the sofa, his breath ragged, his hand resting on my arm. Vincent stepped back, retrieving his blazer, his calm unshaken. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, feeling my pulse settle into something steady, real. I'd felt something again, alive, raw, undeniable. But as the quiet crept back in, I wasn't sure what it meant. Was it healing? A bridge back to Daniel? Or just a door I'd never meant to open? Daniel squeezed my hand, his calluses rough against my skin, and Vincent watched us from his desk, his gray eyes unreadable. "What now?" I whispered, more to myself than anyone else. Neither of them answered, and maybe that was the point. I'd have to figure it out for myself.